I've always kept my head down at Carlton and Ridgeway Investments. That's how you survive when you're a junior assistant at one of the most cutthroat firms in the city, and especially when your direct boss is William Carlton. Mr. Carlton, as everyone calls him, always Mr. Never Will or Bill, is the kind of man who ran on power the way most people run on caffeine. Stiff suits, sharper words. He wasn't cruel exactly, but he had a way of making you feel small just by looking at you. Like he'd measured your worth before you ever opened your mouth. And yet, for reasons I didn't fully understand, he kept me around. Promoted me faster than others. Trusted me with meetings, clients, even once with his schedule, a task most people considered a death sentence. He never praised. But he didn't fire me either. In Carlton terms, that meant I was doing something right. So when I got the email, weekend retreat, staff invited, Lake Champlain House, I didn't hesitate. Mr. Carlton never mixed business with leisure. If he was opening up his private lake property to select staff, it wasn't a vacation. It was a test. One I had every intention of passing. The drive up from Manhattan was long, but the moment I turned down the tree-lined gravel path and saw the sleek, glass and cedar house nestled beside the water, I understood something. Power doesn't just speak, it displays. Carlton's lake house was quiet, expensive in a minimalistic way, the kind of place you see in luxury magazines but never imagine real people owning. The lake glittered in the afternoon sun, wide and still. There was a dock, a canoe, Adirondack chairs set out in perfect symmetry. The house itself was 2 levels of clean lines and open space, with a wraparound deck that overlooked the water. I was early, I always am, and one of the housekeepers showed me to my room. High ceilings, warm light, a view of the lake. I put my bag down and changed into something more relaxed but still presentable. Just as I was heading downstairs, I heard a voice from the back patio. "You must be the one my dad's always grumbling about." I turned and saw him leaning against the railing, tall, sun-kissed, with dark curls falling over curious, amused eyes. He had a glass of lemonade in his hand, tan arms crossed, and an expression that was half mischief, half appraisal. "I'm Lucas," he said, pushing off the railing and walking toward me. His son. "You're Ryan," I said, holding out a hand. He took it, firm shake, but didn't let go right away. His eyes held mine a second longer than necessary, and there was something almost playful in his smile. "Well, Ryan," he said, "I hope you don't mind that I crashed the weekend. Dad's trying to pretend this is a staff retreat, but it's really just a glorified ego fest." I laughed before I could stop myself. "I figured." Lucas stepped back, sipping his lemonade. "You're not like the others," he said casually. I frowned. "How do you mean? You didn't show up in a suit. You're not running around trying to figure out which bedroom gives you the best chance to network. You're calm, observing, smart." I blinked. "Have we met before?" He grinned. "No, but I'm good at reading people. Dad's always said I waste my time doing theater and psychology, but it comes in handy." The moment stretched between us, the air warm but charged. I wasn't used to being seen like that. Not in a workplace setting, and certainly not by someone like him. "I should go check in," I said, suddenly aware of how fast my heart was beating. "Make sure I know the itinerary for the weekend." "Sure," Lucas said, still watching me. "But if you ever want the real tour of the place, let me know. I've been coming here since I was a kid." I gave a polite nod and stepped past him, feeling his eyes on my back as I walked inside. The evening passed in a blur of catered food, Carlton's sharp commentary on market trends, and forced laughter from staff trying too hard to impress. I stayed quiet, listened more than I spoke. That was always my strategy. But my attention kept drifting to the patio doors. Lucas was outside, barefoot now, legs stretched out on a lounge chair, scrolling through his phone while the lake reflected stars. He wasn't part of this world, not really. Too relaxed, too open. And yet, he belonged to it, in name, in legacy. And I didn't belong anywhere. Just another worker bee orbiting the boss's sun. Still, when our eyes met again through the glass, he raised his glass slightly in my direction. And I, God help me, raised mine back. By Saturday morning, the house had filled with more staff, department heads, a few mid-level execs, and their overly cheerful spouses. Most stayed close to the kitchen and the patio, orbiting Mr. Carlton in the hopes of impressing him over breakfast scones and market talk. I kept my distance, sticking to the shadows, just present enough to be seen, just quiet enough not to overstep. Lucas, however, didn't blend in. He strolled through the morning crowd barefoot, with a guitar slung across his back, coffee in hand, and a perpetual smirk that made him look like he knew something no one else did. He greeted people casually, called Mr. Carlton Dad like it was a punchline, and then, just before stepping out onto the deck, he turned to me. "Feel like getting out of this corporate zoo?" I hesitated. "Where to?" He lifted his coffee like a toast. "You'll see." We ended up by the edge of the lake, where the trail curved into pine woods and soft, quiet paths. I hadn't even known there was a trail. Lucas told me he'd marked it as a kid with small wooden signs that were now half faded and tilted. We walked for over an hour, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his failed acting career in LA, his love for independent films, how he hated the term trust fund kid, even though technically that's exactly what he was. He was funny, disarming, and far more observant than I expected. He asked questions no one at work had ever asked me. "Do you actually like what you do?" he asked at one point. I shrugged. "It pays the rent, and I'm good at it." "That's not the same as liking it." I didn't answer. As we circled back toward the house, he brushed his hand against mine. Just for a second. Barely anything. But it sent a current straight through me. I didn't pull away, but I didn't respond either. That night, after the fire pit and the small talk and Carlton's casual insult about lazy creatives, I slipped away from the group and walked down to the dock. The sky was clear, the stars sharp, the lake a sheet of black glass. I sat at the end of the dock and tried to remind myself to breathe. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. "You always escape like that?" Lucas said, lowering himself beside me. "I needed air," I replied. "Or space." I didn't answer. For a moment we sat in silence. Then he leaned back on his elbows, staring up at the sky. "My father's built an empire," he said softly. "But he's never built a relationship. Not one that wasn't transactional." I turned to him, surprised by the bitterness in his voice. "He ever told you he wanted me to be a lawyer? Said theater was for the soft ones." I think that was his polite way of saying queer. "Does he know?" Lucas looked at me, the corner of his mouth twitching into a sad smile. "He pretends not to." A pause. "And you?" he asked. "Are you pretending too?" I felt heat rise in my throat. I didn't know how to answer that. Before I could find the words, Lucas leaned in, slow, patient, watching me the entire time. I didn't move. Not away. Not forward. Just sat there, frozen between fear and want. And then his lips touched mine. It was brief, gentle, barely a question. But everything inside me roared with confusion. I pulled back. "Lucas," I said, my voice low. "I can't." He tilted his head. "Can't or won't. This is complicated. You're my boss's son." "He's not here," he whispered. "Not right now. That's not the point. If he finds out." Lucas sat up straighter. His voice didn't rise, but it firmed. "He doesn't control either of us." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time saw more than a confident smile. I saw defiance. I saw pain. I saw someone who'd spent his life pushing against a wall built by someone else's expectations. "He'll never approve," I said quietly. Lucas smiled. Not a sad smile this time, a stubborn one. "Then let me show you something real. Something he can't control, mock, or fire." My chest tightened. I wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into the way he made me feel, seen, wanted, safe. But the fear still hovered, thick in my throat. "I need time," I said, standing slowly. "I just need time." He didn't argue, didn't follow. "Then take it," he said softly. "But I'll be here." I walked back toward the house with my heart pounding louder than my footsteps, unsure whether I was running away or just delaying the inevitable. I didn't go to breakfast that morning. After a night of restless sleep, replaying the dock scene again and again, I told myself space was smart. Space was responsible. Space would make Lucas forget whatever he thought he saw in me. But Lucas didn't forget. He found me mid-morning by the canoe rack, barefoot, wearing a faded college sweatshirt and carrying 2 coffees. "You skipped the Carlton chaos," he said with a small grin. "Smart move." I took the cup he offered, murmuring thanks. He didn't push, just stood beside me as we watched the lake shift beneath the breeze. "Come by my room later," he said before leaving. "If you want." He didn't wait for an answer. That evening, the others drank wine on the deck while Mr. Carlton recounted the firm's expansion years with theatrical swagger. I sat stiffly on the edge of a wicker chair, nodded at the right parts, laughed on cue. But my mind was miles away, or more accurately, 1 floor above, where Lucas had a private guest suite near the back of the house. Around 10, I slipped away. I paused outside his door, heart racing, every rational instinct inside me screaming to turn back. But when I raised my hand to knock, the door opened before I touched it. Lucas stood there in low lighting, casual calm, like he knew I'd come. "I thought maybe you weren't," I began. He stepped aside, motioning me in. "I didn't doubt you." The suite was warm, dimly lit with a few floor lamps and the soft flicker of a candle burning on the nightstand. There was no tension in the room, only the quiet hum of 2 people who had waited long enough. I moved first. I don't remember the exact moment our lips met. 1 second we were talking, the next we weren't. His hands were warm on my back, mine tangled in his hair. There was no pressure, no rush, just discovery. An unwrapping. Something long buried inside me uncoiled in his arms. Something I'd folded away for years beneath rules, fear, ambition. We moved together like we'd done this before in another life. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. His bed was soft, the sheets smelling faintly of cedar. He pulled me into him like he was welcoming me home. And for the first time in a long time, I felt wanted, not for my work ethic or how well I managed Carlton's calendar, but for who I was when I didn't have to be anything. We didn't fall asleep right away. We lay side by side, tangled in sheets and each other, talking softly about movies, childhood fears, the first time we each knew we were different. At some point, I drifted off with his hand resting over my heart. It was the safest sleep I'd had in years. Morning came too quickly. I woke first. Lucas was still asleep, 1 arm flung across my chest, lips slightly parted. I stayed there for a long time, memorizing him. The quiet lines of his face, the peaceful way he breathed. Eventually, I slipped out of bed, grabbed my clothes, and quietly opened the door, and walked straight into the cleaning staff. A young woman with a linen cart blinked at me, then looked past me into the suite. Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes clicked. Registered. Cataloged. I didn't say anything, just nodded, kept walking down the hall, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The moment the door closed behind me, I knew everything had changed. By lunch, I felt it. The air around me was different. Conversations paused when I entered a room. People avoided eye contact. Whispers followed me like perfume. I sat at the edge of the table during Carlton's outdoor lunch spread, barely able to eat. He said nothing at first, but I could feel his gaze, heavy, calculating. Every time I lifted my eyes, he was watching me, like he was waiting for me to admit something or slip. Lucas, to his credit, acted unfazed. He greeted me with the same warm familiarity as always, even slid into the seat next to me with a plate full of fruit and toast like it was any other day. But the damage had already been done. At one point, I saw Carlton lean toward one of his senior partners, whisper something. The man glanced at me, laughed, sharp and cruel. That's when I realized. The rumors weren't just whispers anymore. They were weapons. And I was about to find out just how far Mr. Carlton would go to protect his pride and punish those who didn't play by his rules. We returned to the city Sunday night. By Monday morning, the office felt sharper than usual. Too quiet, too alert. Whispers floated like smoke in the elevator, and the receptionist wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Something was coming. I felt it before it landed. At 10:14 a.m., my office line rang. It was his assistant. "Mr. Carlton wants to see you. Now." Her tone was flat, clinical. Not a trace of warmth. Not even the usual polite pretense. Just that single word now spoken like a sentence. I took the elevator to the top floor with my stomach in knots. The long hallway outside Mr. Carlton's office had always felt intimidating, but now it felt like a walk to judgment. The glass doors opened before I even knocked. He was standing at the window back to me, arms crossed. For a second, I thought maybe he hadn't heard me come in. Then, without turning, he said, "Close the door." I did. Only then did he turn around. And I knew instantly, the man I'd worked for, tolerated, obeyed, was gone. What stood in front of me now was pure fury masked in control. "You think I'm a fool?" he said quietly. "I don't." "You think I didn't hear? You think the entire house wasn't buzzing with it the moment you left his room?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not because I didn't have words, but because no words would have mattered. "I gave you a chance," he spat. "I took you under my wing, promoted you when I shouldn't have. And this is what you do." He stepped closer, voice tightening. "My son is weak. He's always been weak. But you knew better. You knew what this would mean." I finally found my voice. "With all due respect, Mr. Carlton." "Respect?" he barked. "You slept your way into my house, my trust. And now you dare talk to me about respect?" His words hit like open hand slaps. "It wasn't like that," I said, my voice trembling. "Lucas and what happened was real." He laughed. A short, cruel sound. "Spare me your little romance novel fantasy. You saw an opportunity and took it. Don't pretend it was anything more." Silence stretched between us. "I can't have this in my company," he said finally. "I won't." He walked to his desk and picked up a white envelope. My name was typed on the front in cold, precise lettering. "This is your termination package. 2 months' pay, your non-disclosure agreement, and instructions for immediate removal from all internal systems." I stared at it. At the man who'd once called me indispensable. And still, I didn't reach for the envelope. "You don't have to do this," I said. "Lucas." The door burst open. "Lucas what?" His voice cut through mine, louder now. "Lucas is a child. And if he weren't my son, I'd have had him removed from the board years ago. But you," he jabbed a finger toward me, "you're a parasite." The door didn't close, because Lucas had stepped inside. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. Carlton turned to him, his expression twisting even further. "What's going on is that your little boyfriend thought he could use you to weasel his way to the top. And I'm putting an end to it." Lucas looked at me, then at the envelope. His jaw clenched. "You're firing him?" Carlton narrowed his eyes. "Don't you dare pretend you're surprised." "I'm not surprised," Lucas said. "I'm just disgusted." Mr. Carlton stepped forward. "You're still living off my money, Lucas. You so much as think about siding with him over this family, and I will cut you off." Something passed through Lucas's face then. A flicker of pain, maybe, but it didn't last. "Then cut me off," he said, "because I'm done pretending this place doesn't reek." Mr. Carlton's eyes widened. "You don't mean that." "I do," Lucas said. "You've always hated who I am, and you've punished anyone who got too close. Well, guess what? He didn't use me. You used him. Every late-night call, every emergency request, every last-minute travel itinerary. He carried your company on his back. And now you want to discard him like garbage because you can't handle the fact that I love him?" Couldn't breathe. "Love." Lucas turned to me, softer now. "Let's go." I didn't move at first. I was still holding the envelope, still standing in the office where I had built my career, endured humiliation, chased approval that was never going to come. But I dropped the envelope on the floor without opening it. And I followed Lucas out. We didn't speak in the elevator or on the sidewalk. When we reached the corner, I stopped walking. The city buzzed around us, indifferent to my personal disaster. Lucas looked at me.
"I'm sorry."
I shook my head. "Don't be." You stood up for me. That's more than anyone ever has. He reached out and touched my arm. I'm not going to let this be the end of your story. Or mine. I wanted to believe him. But right now, I felt like a ghost. Emptied out. Floating through the ruins of a life I thought I had. Still, something inside me. Something quiet but unbreakable whispered, "You're not done yet." The first few weeks after I was fired felt like falling through space. There was no structure to my days, no early morning train to catch, no endless stream of investor decks or late-night reschedules. Just me, in my tiny apartment, staring at my laptop screen and trying to convince myself I still mattered without a corporate ID badge. I picked up freelance work where I could, some light strategy consulting, editing presentations for startups, tutoring business school hopefuls who barely listened. It paid enough to keep the lights on. Barely. But it didn't fill the silence. Lucas texted. A few times at first. Then daily. "Are you okay? Can we talk? I miss you." I read every message but didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. How to be around him without feeling like a walking reminder of his family's shame. How to accept love from someone who had once offered me everything, only for me to be stripped of it like a dirty secret. Eventually, the messages slowed, then stopped. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. Months passed. The city turned from autumn gold to brutal winter gray. I stayed busy or tried to. Took more gigs. Worked on my resume. Avoided passing by Carlton and Ridgway's headquarters at all costs. Then one cold morning in early March, I got a call from a former coworker, Jessica. "You sitting down?" she said, half whisper, half excitement. "Why?" Carlton had a heart attack. Small but enough to shake him. He stepped down. Effective immediately. My stomach flipped. And guess who's now interim CEO? I blinked. "Lucas." She laughed. "Not interim. Permanent." He activated something in his mother's will. Turns out she left her shares to him, majority control. No one even knew. I hung up not long after, still stunned. I wasn't sure whether to feel vindicated or afraid. The idea of Lucas running the company his father had ruled with an iron fist felt surreal. Like watching a quiet rebellion unfold in real time. I told myself I wouldn't get involved. But a week later I got the call. Blocked number. "Hello." There was a pause. Then his voice calm, careful. "Ryan, it's me." I closed my eyes. "Lucas." "I'm not calling to make things complicated," he said. "But I want to talk. In person. Please." I hesitated. "It's not just about us," he added. "It's about something bigger. Something that could change everything." Against my better judgment, I said yes. The next morning, I arrived at the firm's main building, heart hammering like it had the day I was fired. But this time, the receptionist greeted me with a smile. She handed me a sleek black visitor's badge. "Mr. Carlton is expecting you upstairs." Mr. Carlton. For a split second, I thought she meant his father. But no, this was Lucas now. He had taken the name and the title. But I wondered if he'd reshaped the legacy. The elevator opened directly onto the executive floor. Everything looked the same: marble floors, abstract art, clean glass lines. But the energy was different. Quieter. Calmer. His office door was already open. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, wearing a dark blue suit that fit like it was tailored yesterday. When he turned to face me, something in me shifted. He looked older. Not in a bad way, just seasoned. Like someone who'd been through fire and come out the other side with new skin. "You came," he said. I nodded, stepping inside. I wasn't sure I would. He gave a small smile. "Me neither." We sat across from each other. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "You have nothing to apologize for." "Yes, I do," he said gently. "I should have protected you better. I should have told you how serious I was from the start." "You did," I replied. "It wasn't you." Lucas leaned forward. "My father's gone to Palm Springs. Early retirement. No say in operations, no board seat. I made sure of that." I raised an eyebrow. "You really took it all." He didn't gloat, just nodded. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But sometimes, to get one, you have to accept the other. Pause stretched. Why am I here, Lucas? He exhaled slowly, then reached into his desk and slid a folder across the table. Because I want you back. I frowned. As what? A consultant? He met my eyes. As CEO. I laughed. More from shock than humor. You're joking. I'm not. You ran most of this place anyway, even when my father never gave you the title. You know the systems, the people, the heart of the firm. And they trust you. More than they ever trusted him. I don't even work here, I said quietly. You should. And not just because you earned it, but because you deserve to lead something that once tried to destroy you. The words landed heavy. I sat back in the chair, dizzy. Lucas, this is a lot. I know, he said, and I'm not asking for an answer today, but I meant what I said back then. You weren't a mistake. You were the only honest thing that came out of that place. I want you to lead it with me, as equals. I looked down at the folder, and for the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar stirring beneath the hurt and fear. Hope. I didn't say yes right away. For a week, I kept the folder Lucas gave me tucked beneath a stack of unread mail on my kitchen table. Unopened, untouched, humming with quiet weight every time I passed it. CEO. Of Carlton and Ridgeway. Sounded surreal even in my own head. That office, those boardrooms, the polished conference tables and the cutthroat smiles. They had once chewed me up and spat me out. I had walked out of that building humiliated, fired, discarded like a rumor nobody wanted to address. Now I was being asked to lead it. There was a time I would have begged for that chance. Fought for it. But after everything, it no longer felt like a prize. Felt like a test. And yet, I couldn't ignore what Lucas had said. You built most of the success my father took credit for. He wasn't wrong. I had stayed up nights cleaning his father's messes, rewriting client decks, saving accounts on the brink of collapse. I knew that firm better than anyone else. Maybe even better than Mr. Carlton had. Still, doubt gnawed at me. Was this Lucas giving me what I deserved, or offering redemption out of guilt? I finally called him on a rainy Thursday evening. I'll meet you, I said, but I need to ask you something in person. He told me to come by after office hours. Said he'd be there. When I arrived, the lobby was quiet, most of the lights dimmed. I took the elevator up alone and found him in his office. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, staring at a wall of numbers on a glass whiteboard. He looked up when I entered, and his expression softened immediately. You look good in here, he said. I ignored the compliment. I need to know something. Ask. This job, this offer, is it because of what happened between us? He didn't flinch. He stepped around the desk and stopped just short of me. No, he said. It's not because of us. It's because of you. I studied his face, every line and shadow. If I had never kissed you at that lake house, would you still have offered me this role? He didn't hesitate. Yes, probably even sooner. That answer landed hard in my chest. He stepped closer. This isn't pity. It's recognition. You kept this company breathing while my father was too proud to notice. You saw things no one else did, and you fixed them. Quietly, without credit, without complaint. Then why now? Because now, he said, you finally get to do it your way.
No hiding. No limits. Punto.
I looked down. My throat was tight. And what about us? He was quiet for a moment, then said, that's your choice too. I want both, the company and you, but only if it's real. Only if it's equal. He paused, searching my eyes. This isn't a bribe. It's a beginning. I believed him, and I said yes. The first few weeks as CEO were surreal. My office was the same one I'd once been summoned to as a terrified assistant, only now I sat behind the desk. My name was on the glass. My voice carried weight. The board was hesitant at first. Some skeptical of my past, others loyal to the old regime. But I didn't flinch. I made it clear from day one, we were doing things differently now. Transparent leadership. Inclusivering. No more deals made behind closed doors. Some left. Others stayed. The company reshaped itself. Lucas kept his role as chair not just in title but in presence. He didn't interfere. He trusted me, advised only when asked. He sat in the back during board meetings, never once pulling rank. Outside of work, we took things slow. Dinner once a week. Walks in the park. Quiet conversations that lingered longer each time. It wasn't like before. The electric urgency, the forbidden thrill. This was different. Steady. Earned. One night, we ended up back at my place. Not with the heat of lust, but with something deeper. The quiet gravity of two people who had survived something together and found each other on the other side. We didn't rush it. We didn't need to. He stayed the night, and in the morning he made coffee like he belonged there. And maybe he did. I remember standing by my office window a month later, watching the city wake up below. The skyline buzzed with ambition, but I felt calm. Not because I had one, but because I had chosen not to let them break me. Mr. Carlton had tried to reduce me to shame. Lucas had given me a second chance. But I had taken the final step on my own. Now, I ran the very empire that once cast me out. And I did it on my own terms, with a steady hand, a clear voice, and a man by my side who no longer had to hide who he was to anyone. I wasn't just someone's assistant anymore. I was someone's partner. And I was finally mine. It was a Wednesday when the past walked back in. The morning had started like any other: strategy briefs, back-to-back meetings, approving a new mentorship initiative for junior analysts. I was wrapping up a call when my executive assistant buzzed through. "There's someone here asking to speak with you. Says he's here to begin his consulting contract." I blinked. "Who?" A pause. "Mr. William Carlton." My stomach didn't drop. Not anymore. I just straightened my tie. "Send him to conference room B." I made him wait 5 minutes. Then I walked in. The boardroom was sleek, sterile, expensive. Everything he had designed years ago, down to the monogrammed leather folders still stacked in the center of the table. He stood at the far end, back toward the window, hands folded behind him like a general inspecting his old battlefield. When he turned and saw me, seated at the head of the table, something in him froze. "Ryan," he said flatly. "Mr. Carlton," I replied without rising. "I believe you've met the new owner's partner." He blinked, and I watched the realization bloom, slowly, bitterly, across his face. "Your CEO," he said, each syllable like a stone dropping in water. I smiled. "You catch on fast." He took a step forward. "This wasn't part of the agreement. Lucas never." "I'm not here to discuss your expectations," I interrupted, voice calm, steady. "I'm here to clarify the reality. You no longer have authority in this building. No consulting contract. No shadow board seat. Nothing." He narrowed his eyes. "Lucas wouldn't do this. He knows what I built. He knows what I sacrificed." I leaned back in the chair, folding my hands. "You built a culture of fear. You sacrificed decency. And you fired me for loving your son." His jaw twitched. "You seduced him." I didn't even blink. "He saved me. From you. And from who I thought I had to be in this world." He pointed a trembling hand at me. "This is personal. You're turning this into a vendetta." "No," I said, rising now. "This isn't revenge. This is justice. You threw me out thinking I was nothing. An embarrassment. A mistake. You told me I didn't belong. But I didn't climb my way back in through bitterness." I stepped closer, meeting his eyes. "I walked back in because I earned it. And now, I sit where you used to sit. Not because of your son, but in spite of you." He tried to speak again, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "We're done here, Mr. Carlton. Your parking badge has been deactivated. You'll be escorted out by security. Kindly leave your visitor ID at the desk." "You're making a mistake," he hissed. "You're nothing without me." I stared at him for a long, still second. Then I said what I'd been waiting to say for over a year. "No, Mr. Carlton. I was nothing because of you." He glared, lips tightening into a line, then stormed past me. The door slammed behind him. I sat back down, the silence in the boardroom heavier than before, but cleaner, somehow, quieter, final. Later that afternoon, Lucas stopped by my office. "I heard you had a visitor," he said with a raised brow. "I handled it." He gave a small, proud smile. "I never doubted that." I turned in my chair to face him fully. "Was this your plan? Let him walk in thinking he still had a place?" Lucas shrugged. He needed to see it with his own eyes. That the old kingdom doesn't belong to him anymore. "And you trusted me to do it." He stepped closer, gently touched my hand on the desk. "You're the only one I do trust." I stood and leaned into him, forehead resting lightly against his. "I didn't enjoy it," I said, "but I needed it." "I know. And now," Lucas looked around the office, "now we build something new. Not just better, but real." He kissed me then, soft, sure, like there was no longer anything to hide. I once thought power came from being feared, from being obeyed, from sitting at the biggest desk in the highest office. But now I know real power comes from surviving, from choosing dignity over desperation, from refusing to become the thing that broke you. He built a legacy of control. I built a future of truth. And when he walked out of that boardroom, humiliated, forgotten, and powerless, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Moving in with Lucas wasn't some grand announcement. There were no social media posts, no office gossip, no dramatic reveals. It was quiet, the way we both wanted it. On our terms. Started small. A few nights a week, then weekends, then almost every night. One morning, I realized I'd brought over my toothbrush, my favorite mug, the sweatshirt I always wore when I was anxious. His apartment was filled with sunlight, quiet jazz, and soft blankets that felt like comfort after years of sharp edges and cold offices. Eventually, I just stayed. He never asked. I never had to. We didn't rush anything. We knew what we had, and neither of us felt the need to prove it to the world. We were past that now, past needing validation from anyone but each other. At work, I kept things professional. Lucas and I rarely interacted publicly outside of board meetings. We had an understanding. The company came first, and our relationship lived in the space between protected, sacred, real. And while the firm still bore the name Carlton and Ridgway, it no longer bore the weight of the old Carlton legacy. Because I made sure of that. My first initiative as CEO was simple. Change the company's core. Not just the branding or the profit margins, but the values, the culture, the bones of what we were. I implemented a sweeping review of our hiring and promotion practices. We audited salaries, addressed disparities, and restructured our mentorship programs. More importantly, I created a safe, open pathway for queer employees, something that had never existed before. We launched an internal support network. We added same-sex partner benefits. We brought in external diversity consultants. We offered staff-led training not to tick boxes but to open minds. And I made sure no one else would have to hide who they were to keep a job. Not on my watch. One afternoon, about a year into my leadership, I held a closed-door mentoring session with 5 junior associates. I didn't advertise it, didn't call it anything official. Just a private meeting with coffee and pastries and an open agenda. They were young, bright, full of that electric mix of fear and ambition. One of them, Jordan, a sharp analyst with a talent for reading market patterns, stayed behind after everyone else had left. "Can I ask you something?" they said, voice low. "Of course." They hesitated. "How do you do it?" After everything, after being underestimated. I looked at them, really looked, at the nervous eyes, the quiet ache to be seen. I leaned forward. "You remember who you are, not who they told you to be. And then, when you're in charge, you reach back and pull someone else up." They nodded, eyes shining. And I realized then that this was the legacy I wanted to leave. Not my name on a building, not a bigger corner office, but a path for someone like me to walk a little easier. Lucas and I built something quietly extraordinary. We still had our differences. I liked my routines. He lived in chaos. He left his shoes everywhere. I lined mine up in color-coded order. He read plays late at night. I read financial reports. But it worked. Because we respected the space we'd carved out for ourselves, for each other. Sometimes we sat on the balcony in silence, just watching the city below. Sometimes we argued about politics or movies or whether or not to adopt a dog. And sometimes he'd come home late, drop his keys, and kiss me like I was the only thing holding him steady. We weren't perfect, but we were honest. And that, after everything, felt like the deepest kind of love. I didn't hear from Mr. Carlton again. Rumors said he'd moved to Florida, taken up golf, and refused to speak his son's name in public. That was fine by me, because the truth is, I didn't need his closure. He fired me thinking I was nothing, a mistake, a weakness, an embarrassment to be erased. But all he did was free me to lead, to love, to grow into everything he tried to suppress. He taught me how to play small, but Lucas taught me how to take up space. And I finally chose the right teacher. Some nights, I still walk past my old apartment, the one I lived in back when I was just another name on an internal org chart. I stand across the street, look up at the window where I once cried myself to sleep wondering if I'd ever be enough. Now I smile, not out of arrogance, but gratitude. Gratitude for the boy I was. Gratitude for the man I became. Gratitude for the truth that carried me when pride tried to bury me. We held our first company pride event last summer. It wasn't flashy. No big floats or glittery headlines. Just an open courtyard. A few rainbow flags, music, and speeches from people who never thought they'd be allowed a voice. I didn't make a speech that day, but Lucas did. He stood on the small stage in front of our staff, his voice steady, clear. I used to think I had to hide who I was, he said, even from myself. But then I met someone who didn't just accept me, he saw me. And because of him, this company isn't just profitable. It's proud. He looked at me when he said that. Right at me. I didn't cry, but I did squeeze his hand so tight he winced. Years from now, I hope people forget about William Carlton's empire of silence. I hope they remember the shift, the turning point, not the fall but the rise, the rebuilding. The day someone walked into a boardroom they were never meant to enter, and took the seat no one thought they'd earn. Not through seduction, not through pity, but through relentless, unapologetic worth. I was fired because I loved the wrong person. But that love, it built a new world. And every morning now, when I walk into my office, I carry that quiet power with me. Not as a weapon, but as a torch, lighting the way for whoever comes next. Because I was never nothing. I was becoming. And now I own the room. What did you think of Ryan's journey? Was his rise to CEO poetic justice or just the start of something bigger? Did Lucas make the right choice stepping away from his father's legacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read everyone. And if you've ever been underestimated, fired unfairly, or told to stay in your place, tell us, what would you have done? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories of love, resilience, and unexpected revenge.